Hello everyone, welcome to the Heli Cave. I wanted to make a little video on to try to help people out that are kind of new to helicopters, especially to the 6-channel variety. Generally when you buy a helicopter it says ready to fly, it's not going to be ready to fly out of the box. In other words, you're not going to be able to take it out of the box and fly it right away, without doing nothing to the helicopter. I have not seen yet one helicopter that you didn't have to do something to get it to fly. I think what they mean by ready to fly is everything's there for the helicopter to fly. You don't have to buy a transmitter, a receiver, the battery, charger, nothing. It's ready to fly. In other words, you got everything there for the helicopter to fly. Not that it's flyable out of box. That's how they should write it, flyable out of box, not ready to fly out of box. I think it's a big misconception. Most people get confused. I myself is like, well, it says ready to fly. Why won't my helicopter fly when I get it? Whatever I do, it just won't fly. Well, it's because normally it's not set up right. So, some things you can do before you get your helicopter to do anything with is check it out. And generally, when you're new to helicopters, you don't know what to check for. So what I recommend is when you get a helicopter, the first thing you want to do is make sure that everything is there. You want to make sure that nothing's bent, nothing's broken, no blade damage, all your your fly bar, your tail, and all nothing's bent. All that's very important. If you've got a helicopter, it's got something wrong with it. A bad linkage or a bad strip bolt or anything like that at all. A loose bolt even can cause a lot of damage to your helicopter, damage to yourself or anybody else that's around. So you want to be extremely careful and make sure your helicopter checks out all right. So what I do is, like, if let's say I just got this helicopter just in the box, and I noticed that my gyro, my receiver, everything's on it, and I've got a battery there, I've got a transmitter. It looks ready to fly, but like I said, I have not bought a helicopter yet that was ready to fly. Actually, when I got this one, I had to do a lot of stuff to this one before I could fly it. There was no way it was flying right out of the box. Even with some minor transmitter adjustments, it wouldn't work. What I do is the first thing you want to do is you want to check your servos to make sure they're set right. And most people would say, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I know how the servos should be set? Best way to do it is anytime you're going to work on a helicopter where you're going to power it up, always disconnect the motor from the ESC. That's the first thing you want to do ever. You don't want this to spin up on you accidentally and hit you in the face or cause damage to you or something around you or the helicopter. It's always safer to just disconnect the ESC from the motor, okay? After you've got that disconnected, what I do is I put the left throttle stick at mid-stick and I flip up the idle up switch. What that does is the idle up switch, the motor's going to run at high speed at all times. This throttle will not control the speed of the throttle anymore. It's on high. Until you take that switch off, it's going to stay on high. So you've got it on, you've got the throttle switch up, it's on. You're at mid-stick. This becomes pitch now. So mid-stick is 0 pitch. Above mid-stick is positive pitch. Below mid-stick is negative pitch. So at mid-stick on normal flight with the 3D switch on, I call it the 3D switch, but it's your idle up switch. With that on and this set at mid-stick, your servo arms should be at a perfect 90-degree angle. They shouldn't be sitting up, they shouldn't be down, they should be right in the middle, right at 90. Just like this right here. They should look just like that. If not, you're going to want to take and disconnect the servo arm from the servo, disconnect all 3 of them. Power up your heli, put the idle up switch up to mid-stick, and then you want to slide your servo arm at the closest 90. If you can't get it just perfect, that's okay, but get it as close as possible. Generally, you're going to have real close. It's either going to be a little up, a little down. Sometimes they'll line right up on it, but generally you want it to get it at the 90. Get it close as possible. Do all three servos like that. Your elevator, your elevator, and well, you ever just get a brain freezing? You can't think of anything. Anyways, your elevator, aileron, and your rudder. But anyways, make sure all your servos are level. Once you've got that done, and you know your servos are set right, then the next thing you want to do is make sure your swash plate is level. And generally, you want to use a swash plate leveling tool. What you do is you take the head off, you disconnect the rotor head nut, disconnect the linkage from the swash plate, the 4 linkages, and take the rotor head off. It'll slide right off the shaft. Then you slide this over the top of the shaft, and this sits right on the ball links of your, kind of like just like that. Sits right on top of the ball links. And you just go up and down with your left stick for your pitch, and if you'll be able to tell whether or not this is crooked or not. It's not going to go straight up to the left or right. Depends. You just adjust your ball links until your swash plate's level. So in between your swash plate, in between your servo arm and your linkage arm, you want to adjust those to get your swash plate level. Once you've got that done, that's pretty much it, because this particular rotor head, all the linkage arms are all pre-molded plastic, so there is no adjustments with those. I've gotten some rotor heads before that each one was adjustable individually, and I didn't like that because it made it harder to set up the helicopter. This is already preset, pre-measured. The only ones that you do adjust is for the pitch. There's 2 of them, one for each blade. Now once you got your servo level and your swash plate level, everything else should be level too. Then the way to check to make sure your pitch is right is normally with your helicopter in this position with the blade coming forward, and you're at mid-stick and idle up, in other words 0 pitch on idle up. You slide your pitch gauge on the end, make sure it's set at 0, and the top of this pitch gauge ought to line up parallel with the fly bar. If it's not, you can adjust your linkage until it is level. That way you got 0 pitch with your blades when you have 0 pitch setting on your transmitter. So right in the middle, your helicopter won't go up or it won't go down. If you go up, helicopter goes up. If you go down, helicopter goes down. In other words, it's going to hover right at mid-stick. That's basically it. Your right stick still stays the same. It's for your collective pitch for your swash plate. Forwards, backwards, left, right. And then again, you got rudder. Another thing you can check when you get your helicopter is in normal flight mode, you got it powered up, ESC disconnected from the motor. When you go left with the rudder, the slider ought to move to the right. And if you go right with the slider, right with the stick, rudder stick, slider ought to go to the left. You can also bench test it to make sure your gyro is compensating for the movement of the tail. Now let's say you get your helicopter and you're powering it up, and it starts to either move to the left or to the right. It won't hold steady when it's coming up to a hover. Generally that's your rudder mix gyro sensor. It's your dip switch. Make sure all your sub trims are set at 0, right in the middle. Under the throttle is your rudder dip switch. Make sure that's in the middle. And then your V1 knob. For an analog system, go ahead and turn your V2, make sure that's all the way to the left. But before you do that, you power it up. You don't have to have the idle up switch on or anything like that. That's only when you're doing it for your swash plate to make sure that you're at a 90 degree. But you want to make sure that to change, to compensate, make sure your sub trims it at 50%. Take you want to move your V1 knob past the positive side is right at about 2 to 3 o'clock is where you want to be with that. V2 knob all the way to the left once your dip switch is on. Now let's say your helicopter starts to move a little bit to the right. Just move the V1 knob a little bit until it starts to stop. If it starts moving faster in that direction, then go the opposite direction with your V1 knob until it starts to stop, and then it'll eventually stop, or it won't either go left or it won't go right. Okay, you follow me? So the V1 knob will stop that. You shouldn't have to mess with your sub trim at all. You should be able to stop that tail all with your V1 knob. Analog systems, make sure V2 knob is all the way to the left. No gain. You want to make sure that your V1 knob is right at about your 2 o'clock position before you start. And then power up your heli in normal flight mode. In other words, your high-speed switch off. Anyways, make sure that's off. And then when you get up to about mid-stick, helicopter should be starting to come off the ground. If not, you want to adjust your head speed. And I'll tell you how to do that in a minute, but you're doing the tail. Right at about mid-stick, it should start to come off the ground, and it's either going to start moving left or to the right. Just move your V1 knob either to the left or to the right real slow till you find out which way it's going, and then you'll know where to set it. You just do one slow changes at a time, and eventually that tail will stop. And then once that's done, you turn your rudder mix gyro sensor dip switch off. That sets it. Then you can go back to the midpoint. If you're at 50% throttle and your helicopter's not coming off the ground, you can change that too. You can flip on your expositional dip switch on. I recommend for new pilots at about the 10 o'clock position for the V2 knob. That slows down your servo movement a lot. In other words, you have slower movements with your heli instead of quick movements with your heli. When you're learning, you want slower movements. So I recommend at about 10 o'clock, maybe 11 when you get a little better, and then you can go up to 1, 2 o'clock on the positive side once you get really good. And your helicopter will be real responsive then. Your V1 knob is what controls the head speed. Right at about 3 o'clock should be about right for that. At mid-stick it should start to come off the ground, but how I check that is I turn it down to the mid position right at 0. I get it up to mid-stick, I power it up at mid-stick, and then I keep turning the V1 knob to the right until my helicopter starts to lift off the ground. Once that's done, then you're set. You've got your servo speed set, and you've got your head speed set. Flick the expositional button off. That sets it. Your POT pitch, V2, V1. One knob is for the pitch for idle up position for the blade pitch, and your other knob is for your idle. Your other knob is for your pitch in normal flight mode. That's basically it. So the biggest thing is make sure all your screws are tight. Make sure your servos are lined up. Make sure the helicopter is doing what you're telling it to do with the transmitter, and then get you a crash kit. But before you do all that, I mean, if you've never flown a 6-channel helicopter before, I highly recommend getting a 4-channel fixed-pitched helicopter. Don't get a real small micro. Get a little bit larger size 4-channel. Make sure it's a fixed pitch, because they fly a lot like a 6-channel in normal flight mode. They fly almost just like a 6-channel in whenever they're not flying 3D. So yeah, get a 4-channel fixed pitch and just practice. You know, you're going to find that it's not so easy to fly one of them either. If you can get real good at flying a 4-channel, then you're ready for one of these. Also get a simulator. Practice on the simulator as much as you can. That'll really help you a lot. That's basically it. I mean, I can, if anybody has any questions, like if they saw something in this video, they have more questions about it, or it's like, hey, can you tell me how you did your servo again? And I can make another video just pertaining just to the servo, or like, yeah, can you tell me how to set those servos up on the swash plate again? I'll make a video just for that. But I just wanted to kind of cover out of the box what to expect, what to do, and how to fly your helicopter. You know, it's very complicated. 6-channel helicopters are one of the most complicated aircraft to fly. There are some planes out there, some of your EDFs that are pretty hard to fly. But overall, I think the helicopters are the hardest because it's so many different controls that goes into making the thing fly. And you know, it's just not a question of putting it on the ground and sticking a battery to it, powering up, flying it. There's a lot that goes into them. The biggest thing is maintenance on these things. Always check your pinion gear. If they're looking really bad, you know, if they're looking, you know, to where, always change those because of a pinion gear. If a pinion gear goes out, starts to get really worn, it'll shear off that, it'll really shear up your main drive gear really bad, or you gotta change it. I've had that happen to me a few times with my Dynam. So just make sure you do that, and you know, everything will be alright. Alright guys, that's it. If you have any questions, drop it in the comment box. I'll be more than happy to help if I can. Thanks, bye.